and welcome to DiceTillDawn and my review today of Honshu. This is a game designed by Kalle Malmioja and published by the Finnish designer Lautapelit.fi. A review copy was provided to me by Lautapelit.fi. And what is Honshu? It is basically a trick-taking, map-building kind of combination game for 2 to 5 players and plays in basically maybe 30 to 45 minutes depending on the players, and the player count could be up to an hour with 6 players or 5 players maybe. But first let's go through how the game is played. I'll show you the components and the basic ideas of the game and then come back for my final thoughts. Okay, so here is everything that comes in this inviting and beautiful box. A small and nice box. And there are 6 rule books or inserts in various languages. I think this is the basic version, there might be others, but anyway, the rules are pretty clear. There is some problems with the turn order, new turn order. If you are not familiar with trick-taking games, you might have some weird moments with the picture because you can really confuse it if you overthink it, I guess. But a good rule book in other ways. Then there are the resource cubes, 40 of them, 10 of each color. Then there are the turn order cards, which are just given to the players according to where they place in the trick. Then there are the starting cards. The A sides are the same for everyone. Different resources or something, that's basically the same. But then there are the B sides, which are have bigger differences in them for a more variable setup. Then there are the end game scoring cards, which you can use. This is an optional rule. You can either have one for the whole group or table or players that is visible in the beginning, or if you want, you can actually divide one to each player and that's their secret goal they want to get points from. Cool idea and more variability. Then there are just these overview cards which tell you how many points you get for everything. And then there's the main deck, that is 60 cards numbered 1 to 60 of these different kinds of landscapes. They have forests and fields and some resource production places, cities, water and factories. The stars are factories and for resources. And the flowers here mean how many victory points the factory provides. So every player starts with a start tile as their city, and they get the resources immediately. And each player is dealt 6 cards from the deck. And in the first part of the game plays for 12 rounds total, and in the first part it is divided into 2 parts, the trick-taking phase and the building phase. And in the trick-taking phase, you pick one of your cards, depending on the player order, of course. The first player is the one that plays the cards first. So let's say I'm the first player, and I know the numbers are from 1 to 60. I might play, for example, the 50 because I really want to win this trick maybe. So let's say I play it face up so everyone can see. Now the number 2 player has a new choice. They are the next to go in line, and let's say they have these cards. They could now play the 54. They would then beat the first player and could have their pick before the first player. Or they may play whichever card they like, if they just want some lower card that has cool things that the things the other players won't want, for example. So let's say they play, for example, the 42. Then this goes on, let's say the other players played that one. That's a 3-player game, for example. Now, the turn order is divided again after this. The highest number gets the first player, and the second highest and the third highest, like this. And after this is done, the first player now gets to pick one of these cards. Let's say he wants that 42 card. And then the number 2 player gets to pick one from the leftovers, and let's say he wants that one, and the third player then gets the last card. And after this, the game moves on to the building phase, in which this is the main part of the game, in my opinion at least. And you can now put this into your city. There are a few rules. First of all, you have to put this card either on top of at least one square on your existing city, or maybe under this city, like this, or like this, for example. But anything you cover is out of the game. So if I cover, for example, this resource production like this, for example, which wouldn't make no sense, but anyway, that means that the resource is not produced and it is gone. Also, if I put it over my own current resource factory or production building, I also remove the resource cube. So the other rule is that basically you can, if you have water, you can never cover water with anything. So I couldn't put this under here, for example, or if I already had this in my city, I couldn't later cover it with anything. That's the main rule. But other than that, it's free to build whatever you want. But the game is kind of nicely brain burnery, so that you get points for these things. For example, each forest square in the end is worth 2 points. Each city square is worth 1 point, but you only count the biggest city you have in your whole city. So, for example, in this point, this would be my biggest city and it would be worth 4 points. This would be worth nothing. So that's another one. Then for each factory you have, if you can transfer resources to that factory of the same color, so let's say I have this blue resource, I move it here. That's now 4 points in the end, and I can only do this once per factory, so I couldn't put many blue into the same factory. But of course, if I had another factory and another blue resource, I could put it here and get 7 points. And then there are the lakes, and for each lake there is in your city, you get 0 points for the first square and 3 points for everyone after that. So that would be 3 points. Or let's say I had this one, that would now be worth 6 points. And it does work so that, let's say this whole lake was here. Now this would be worth nothing because it's the first of a new lake, 0 points. And this would be 0 points plus 3, so 3 points. And that's all the scoring in the game, except if you play with the optional rules, you can use one of these to get more points from, which I recommend, but maybe not needed for the first game. And that's basically the game. One extra thing for the trick-taking phase is that every time you play a card down, you can add a resource from your city if you want to that card, to add 60 to the value of the card. So this would now be a value of 110. Hard to beat. And also every player after this player would also have to match the resource if they wanted to add a resource. So they could only add yellow resources to their cards if they wanted to. So if you really need a card or really want to beat the trick, you can really make it happen with these resources. But remember, these are also worth points in the end usually, if you can get the corresponding factory. But that's basically the game. The trick or the puzzle here is figuring out how to build this city most effectively to get most out of the squares and points and factories and the biggest city and all these things. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully I didn't forget anything important, but that's how you play Honshu. Okay, so that's Honshu. Hopefully you got an idea how to play the game. And my final thoughts. Well, I really like this game. This is just an brain burnery and still so light and quick game. It's weirdly fun because usually the amount of brain burning I get from this game is maybe kind of like a heavier Euro game or something, even though I can't say this is heavy, but it really tickles my brain at the right spots, and every turn there is a constant struggle on how to place this card. The cards are designed superbly so that always the things you want to be left visible are always hardest to manipulate, so that you can actually fit them to your city. And in the end, it's just out of control, the city, and every card always gives you points, so you always have to weigh if it is actually worth paying with resources for the card, or is it worth just taking the lower card maybe, but still not using the resource cube. And all these decisions are delicious. And I think one of the biggest things I liked about this game is that this is a trick-taking game that actually works greatly with 2-player. The variant, the designer actually tells in the book, in some of the interviews, that he designed it with his wife because they play a lot together, and you can really see it. I also play a lot with my girlfriend, and we both fell in love with the 2-player variant. In the 2-player variant, I didn't explain it in the rules. Basically, you first draw 2 cards to the center of the table from the deck, and those form a pair. Then each player plays 1 card face down, and they are revealed simultaneously, and they form another pair. Then the player that plays the highest card wins the trick and can now pick either of the pairs to pick from. So they could either take the cards the players played or the cards that came from the deck. And after those are picked, the players get to play one of those 2 cards to their city, and the other is discarded. And of course, the loser has also the possibility of winning the trick if they, after losing the trick, spend 2 resource cubes. They actually win the trick and get to pick first. So that's a variant on the resource trick-taking mechanic, I guess. And even though it doesn't really feel like trick-taking anymore, it's just really a good way to divide the cards and make the competition for the cards fierce. And there are different I think mechanics in play here, because I usually find that I prefer trying to not just win the trick, but actually just play another card that is as good as something that is on the common pile, so that even if I lose the trick, I will get to pick 1 good card. Not sure if that's a good way to think about it, but I usually tend to think that way. Anyway, that's just the 2-player game is great, but the trick-taking in the multiplayer gets fun, and when people start throwing the resource cubes in, the numbers get ridiculously high, but you just want to win it sometimes. But also, it's great to be last in a trick-taking game, so that's also nice, because then the next round you get to see all the cards first, and you can actually play 1 higher or something like that and get to pick first. So all these things work perfectly. It's a cheap, small box that contains a lot of game. So check out Honshu. Bye.